Welcome in to another edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. This is a unique podcast that is available outside of the normal show. If you've never heard of the Rick and Bubba show and somehow you've just found this podcast, I would encourage you to go to Rick and Bubba, spell out the word and.com, find out all the different ways you can actually catch the full show.
You're only 30 years behind.
You're only 30 years behind. We're literally 29 years and 4 months into this, but thank you for joining us. So, Bubba, today, you and I, we have to approach our guest today with our hat in our hand a little bit. Sean of the South is a national treasure, is what he is, and so I didn't know that, and so I was sitting around with a friend of mine, and he's going on and on about Sean of the South, and I said, you talking about the guy on the commercials? And he was like, yeah. He goes, I said, well, why are you obsessed with the guy that's doing insurance commercials? And he was like, you don't know Sean of the South? And I was like, I mean, I know that, and I've heard this. That's who that is.
Right.
And he goes, and I felt, you ever had somebody look at you like you're a loser?
Oh,
and
yeah.
you missed something?
Rick, I see that quite a bit.
Yeah, and I was like, what? He goes, you've never been to one of his shows? You've never read any of his writing? No, I mean, and then that started the journey, and then I go to church, and my pastor comes up to me and says, you know something, I'm thinking about trying. I think you and Sean of the South, and we ought to get. I'm gonna take Debbie, my wife, and you get Sherry and Sean and his wife. I'm gonna try to set up time for us to go have dinner. Y'all need to meet each other. I think y'all have a lot in common. And I'm like, Lord, are you wanting me to meet Sean of the South? And Bubba, today's the day.
Sean Dietrich is our guest.
Welcome to Rick and Bubba University. Sean Dietrich, better known as Sean of the South.
Man, I have been waiting 29 and a half years to get here.
This thing lately with you in this show, I don't know what's going on, but today's the beginning, I think.
I'm excited about it. When I walked in and I saw a big boy in the corner,
I know.
I knew I was meant to be here.
What a day. I'm thinking.
Sean, I think it started, the first time that I remember seeing you was on a Alpha commercial. Was that right?
Yeah.
And then we thought you were on another commercial too.
But you said
you're saying that ain't you.
No, that ain't me. I've been told a lot that I look like the guy from Jack's, but until this morning, I didn't know that they were telling me I looked like the guy from Jack's. People would say, I saw you in the Jack's commercials, and I realized, and I just nodded in agreement thinking they were talking about Alpha, and I realized this morning that Jack's has been trying to get Sean 2.0.
I think they found a lookalike.
I think so.
Yeah, but I don't know that. But anyway, so the whole pursuit of this has been quite interesting because people everywhere think that your platform and this platform belong together.
Well, hey.
So today's the day.
Today is the day.
And then we look up, knowing we had you booked, and I'm watching, local television out of where our show is located, which is Birmingham, Alabama. And we look up on one of these screens that's in this very studio where we're doing this podcast, and we see you on the local morning show for TV with Brad Ryan.
Yeah.
Who we just had on the show this week, 3 on the String. I grew up with Brad Ryan. He and his dad and Bobby Horton and Andy, 3 on the String, they've been on the show for 29 years and 4 months.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much the whole time. And I'm like, now he's hanging out with Brad.
Yeah, well, I've got bad tasting friends.
I'm telling you. I thought to myself, all these things I'd heard about as discernment, I now throw out.
So, Sean, we also understand you do live events.
Yeah, we got to figure this out.
You sing. I mean, tell us, we got to know, what all does Sean do?
We don't know, because I tried to get people to describe you to me. I've even been pestering Brad about it. I said, if I go to see Sean, say, live in a theater, what am I doing? What's happening?
Well, I'm not real sure about that. I've been trying to figure that out for a while now. The way I started was through my writing. I've played music since I was a child. I should preface everything by saying that. But I started with this writing thing. And then after I had self-published my first book, it was Christmas. I self-published a book of 150 pages. It was about this thick. It was very thin.
Yeah.
And I put out online that I was going to give away 150. I printed up 150. And within a few seconds, everybody online who had been reading my stuff bought, or asked for a free book. They'll do anything when it's free.
Yes.
And then my wife's phone that same afternoon started dinging, and someone had gotten a hold of her eBay account and figured out how to PayPal her. This is kind of the older days, I guess. So all of a sudden, I looked at her account, and they had paid for every single book, triple the amount that they were worth.
Wow.
So I had all this money in this account, so I printed more books, and I gave more books away. And that kind of grew and grew. It was someone's granddaddy would give a book to someone's other granddaddy, and they, people were actually reading what I was writing. The Docent Library, the Houston County Library, asked me to come and give a talk a few years later. And I said, do what?
Right, yeah.
And what am I going to be talking about? They said, well, just come do it. I turned them down twice. She kept wearing me out. I went to the Docent Library, and I thought, it was a tiny room. There were about 10 chairs in there and a coffee machine. I thought, who's going to come to this? And 10 people arrived, the chairs were taken, and then 10 more people arrived. And then they were standing out on the sidewalk. There were a few hundred people who just showed up. And I'm up there with a guitar because I didn't know what else to do. And I said, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, just play a song. So I played a song, and then I was done, and I said, what do you want me to do now? They said, well, tell a story. So I told a story. And that's been about 10 years ago. Ever since then, this thing has grown into being a storytelling and song-telling event. And we've done them in 39 different states and met some extraordinary people. And we do sing-alongs and stuff, which is really interesting because I just did one in Connecticut. And
Connecticut.
I didn't know.
I bet you're quite the little in Connecticut.
Little gem.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like Bigfoot.
I didn't even know they knew who Jesus was up in Connecticut.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I started up there, and I did a sing-along, and they knew all the words to gospel tunes. I could hardly believe it.
Wow.
Which song was it?
Do Lord.
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do you remember me, oh Lordy, do. Yeah, and they joined right in?
Right. They sung,
Vacation Bible
they sung
school
harder.
favorite. Yeah.
They sung harder than the folks in Huntsville.
I bet they did.
Yeah.
People under persecution will do that.
Huntsville is just a bunch of Yankees. Anyway.
Right. But so this is how it's been attempted, because I'll press people on, no, I need to know what I'm missing. Yeah. And I've heard that this has been from my pastor. He said, picture if Louis Grizzard loved Jesus and had been redeemed. I said, okay, I'll take that. Then picture Andy Griffith and Leon Redbone creating one person.
Did Brad tell you to say that?
Yeah. I thought, okay, that's one. And so it's like you really are kind of a combination of a lot of things. But when you said they had seen some of my writings when you did the free book, where did they see those writings? Were you doing a blog?
Yeah, I have quite a sordid past, or I guess you could call me a lovable loser. I dropped out of school when I was in 7th grade, so I quit school altogether after my father died, and because of that, I started working construction. And in construction, you get around people who are kind of uneducated
and rough.
Yeah, and that was me. That was my life. That was what my life was going to be. And I was on a job site one day, and a fella who was laying tile with me looked at me and he said, "I'm a doctor. Did you know that?" And I looked at him. He was all rough around the edges. He had a belt buckle the size of a tractor tire and 2 ears that were huge. And I said, "If you're a doctor, I'm a nurse."
Right.
And he said, "No, I'm not an MD. I'm a PhD." He said, "And I want you to know that you could do that. You could go to school." And I said, "Well, I'm a dropout. You know that." He said, "You want to know how easy school is, son?" He said, "School is going and sitting in front of an egotistical maniac who talks to you for 1 hour solid, remembering enough key phrases to gratify his ego, and then regurgitate them onto a piece of paper, and that's college."
Oh, that's wisdom. Man, I've never heard college put in such a nutshell.
And I said, "You think I could do it?" He said, "Yes, I do." Well, I had been reading ever since I dropped out of school a lot of books, only because I felt it wasn't because I'm smart. Because I felt so isolated from an educational community. So I drove that afternoon to my local community college in Northwest Florida, which was a little college house and mostly double-wide trailers. And I walked in, and I saw this woman behind the counter in the admissions desk, and I said, "Ma'am," I'll never forget this. I said, "I'd like to go to college." She said, "Okay, well, where'd you go to high school?" And I said, "Well, I didn't." And she said, "All right, well, where'd you get your GED?" And I said, "Well, I didn't." She said, "Well, then you're screwed." And I said, "Okay," I had a feeling. So I turned around to walk out the door. And this woman came from the back, and she looked at me and said, "There is a way. We have homeschoolers come in all the time, and they have to take a test to prove what they know. And if you take that test, you could get in here. You'd have to do some remedial classes." Because I come from a long line of horse thieves and car salesmen, I said, "I'll take it. I'll do the test now." So I took a 3-hour test, and I just recalled what my cousin Ed Lee said when I was a child. If you don't know the answer on a multiple choice test, just fill in the bubble C.
Right, yeah.
So I filled in the bubble C, and I made it into college. The first class I took was a literature class. It took me 11 years to get my degree. And I had a lot of fun.
Notice we're not laughing.
No,
because our numbers were very
again,
close.
Our story is remarkably
No wonder
close.
people think we should hang out. Yeah.
And when I emerged,
Bubba and I both should be doctors. Yeah.
Well, Rick, I am.
Well, that's true. Bubba got an honorary doctorate. Yes, he did.
Well, after community college, I wanted to go to study writing, real writing. So I enrolled in an institution which shall remain nameless for the purposes of this podcast.
Yes.
But is located on 1600 Florida State University Drive. And they made me do an audition. They auditioned my work. And as I sat in that room, there were 10 professors with black turtlenecks up to their neck and horn-rimmed glasses. And they looked at me and told me flat out, "We can't let you into this school. You're an educational failure. We can't do it." And it was a huge crush to everything. I left the school that afternoon and felt just as low as I ever did in my life. And that was the night that I posted my very first blog. This was a long story, but this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
We're in no rush.
Yeah.
I posted my first blog, and since then it's been a nonstop hayride for me. That was the beginning of the rest of my life. So being turned down was really a blessing.
We'll come back. We'll continue our conversation with Sean of the South when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
So Sean Dietrich, Sean of the South, is our guest on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. So you drop out of school, you were working construction, you had somebody with a PhD say you could get a college education, you get into the local college, but then when you go to this college that turned you down, that will remain nameless,
right?
That was located on Florida State University Parkway. But you then wrote your first blog. Did you even know what a blog was?
No, I didn't. There was some chick out there at the time called the Pioneer Woman, and my wife read her blog, and I said, "Well, that'll never go.
Right.
That'll never work. She'll never give me anything famous."
Right.
But my wife said, "You should do it." And it was also my wife and her friend. We were at breakfast one day. She said, "You need to give it a classy name, something that draws on your Southern roots." I said, "What, like Sean with the Wind?" She said, no. And it was my friend Melissa who knew that I liked the band Alabama. And she said, "Well, what about Song of the South, Sean of the South?" And now that's what my wife calls me during arguments. That name stuck.
Oh, yeah.
So I posted this first blog. It was about being a fisherman in Indian Pass, Florida, and I won't tell the whole contents of the story, but at the time that I had been fishing, my wife had been ensuring that I eat plenty of fiber.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
And she got this box of cereal that you could only get it at the pharmacy behind the counter.
I mean, real fiber.
Yeah, it was called Kaboom.
Yeah.
And I had quite a bad accident while I was fishing off Indian Pass, and I caught a bull shark. And this story is what I wrote. I wrote 500 words about it. And the very next day, I went to the grocery store, and I was standing at the meat case, And a woman came up next to me, and she had her cell phone out, and she looked at it, and she looked at me. She looked at the phone, she looked at me, she said, "Are you the fisherman who crapped his pants?"
See, well, no wonder people want us to hook up. People say the same thing to us.
And that was the beginning of my career.
Well, when you think about the South, I mean, there is a reputation that Southerners are phenomenal storytellers. And you know, so really, I mean, all of us, we all grew up, I'm sure, very similar as far as the environment around us. Yeah. And, you know, some of the greatest stories I ever heard featured an older man whittling, never even looking at me, just looking at how he's whittling and telling these incredible stories. Yeah. So obviously you were writing, but you were writing from you'd established somehow, somebody had taught you, or you had developed a way to tell stories like most Southerners should be able to do.
Yeah, I believe storytelling is a cultural phenomenon that is disappearing today. I don't hear many young people engaging in the art of storytelling, but one generation before us, my generation even, still does it. And you do it on the porch, and there's only two things that you have to do when you tell a story. It has to be funny, it has to have some sort of comedic value, and it has to be short. Yeah. And old men know how to do that. Yeah. They all know how to do that. I'm afraid that in the next 20 years, old men won't know how to do it. but I do love that. I do love the culture of storytelling.
But don't you think that whether you realize or not, that people, even if they're not acknowledging it, that's part of the thing that draws an audience to what you're doing? I think there is a yearning for it.
I do too. I think the farther into the technological universe that we get into, I think there's more of a desire to feel the sense of nostalgia that we used to feel as children, of sitting on that porch. Or I do a lot of talking about food, because food is so we go to these little churches.
Sean, we love food.
This is like a friendship.
Can you tell?
I'm now going to quote Casablanca. I believe this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Rick, please don't spook Sean. Okay. You've done a lot of damage lately.
I have to warn you.
Casa who?
Yeah, I have to warn you that I have, and I know it's a flaw, okay, that if we meet people that only the show has provided, they really don't want to be around us. They want access to the audience, okay?
Right.
And I have to understand that, and I don't sometimes. I think they really are developing a friendship with me, and I'll try to attach myself to them, and I'll spook them. And, you know,
what happened? Scaring a deer out of a green field.
What happened to me and Howie Long a few weeks ago, I'm still looking back, and I thought, where did I go wrong? You know, when he left.
Well, when you bull rushed him, Rick.
When he left, I thought he'll be texting me before he even gets to the airport. Yeah. You know, and it didn't happen. And it's so.
Matter of fact, he's changed his number now.
But Bubba's being my friend, saying, please don't come in too hot with me. No matter, even though he keeps talking about everything we like, right? And it sounds like that he could be, you know, on the show, on a reoccurring.
Let me state clearly and publicly that you haven't scared me yet.
but yeah, I mean, you know, so when you're talking about, you know, things like food, and we've noticed that too. You know, it's not about our show, it's about you. But the similarity there is when this show sort of took its turn and started developing an audience, is when we realized, why are we trying to do anything other than what's happening on the deck or on the porch of our homes when the family, extended family or friends are together? You know, instead of us trying to write all this, you know, come up with these bits and all this, you're looking around and go, I see people laughing on this deck, like bent over laughing.
Yeah, yeah.
I see people on this porch bent over laughing. You know, what are they laughing at?
Yeah.
And what they were laughing at is life.
Yeah.
They were just laughing at. Hey,
Rick, I'd rather you just stay with porch. Don't use deck.
Right. Well, that's true. Because people, the generation that got put on decks, they're not near as good as those that were raised on porch.
Yeah, like, decks are built on the back of the house.
Right. Yeah. James Gregory said that. He said Opie did not get raised on a deck. but anyway, but you're on the porch. But what we noticed was what had people bent over laughing was not the Rodney Dangerfield kind of write a joke. Yeah. What had people been over laughing was, you ain't gonna believe what happened to me at Walmart.
Yeah, real life.
Yeah.
And it covered a variety of topics. That's another thing. Like what we enjoy doing is, sometimes it's political, sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's church issues. There's a little comedy in all of it.
Oh, and there was a time when that was open season.
Yeah.
And that has become an interesting shift in the culture, especially for folks who engage in anything comic. at least friends of mine, because there are many things off limits.
Oh, I know. Those of us that are in that business.
I wouldn't even go to a college campus.
Yeah. Well, for instance, I used to tell a lot of Yankee Southerner jokes. Right. Have some good ones too.
Yeah.
And the temperature just changed. Those aren't as easily received. So,
really?
So I avoid them until if something changes, I'll go back to them. But
do you though just talk more about our culture?
Yes.
And even in Connecticut, I would think our culture to them is actually quite intriguing.
Well, yeah, and I heard something Andy Griffith say, ironically, a long time ago when they were interviewing him about what he spoke about, and this touched me so deeply. He said, they said, well, what do you do? He said, well, they said, you do Southern humor? He said, no, I do rural humor. He said, oh. He said, well, what's the difference? He said, well, rural humor has been around a long time.
Yeah.
And he said, you can go anywhere and it works. And it's true. If I'm speaking in Texas or if I'm speaking in New York City, somebody has a rural relative who's probably through 6 degrees of separation is related to someone in the South.
And it doesn't matter where you go. Like you say, if you get out of the city far enough, somebody's got a car on blocks in their front yard.
That's it.
Everybody. Michigan, Connecticut, wherever.
But you're not. So if you in your live show, which sadly I have not seen yet, but I will. Well, if I can ever get a ticket, I will resolve that. And the friend who was telling me about you, he was trying to find a ticket to one of your shows, and my goodness, they're all sold out everywhere. So that
shows you how hard up people are right now.
Well, I do think
they need a break.
I think there's something to that. Bubba and I do this. Look, we'll sit here doing this show, and sometimes we'll have days that we'll go. I know these are the headlines of the day. I just can't do this today.
Yeah,
I need a break from all this.
Man, yeah.
I need for us to just sit around and talk about, would you prefer waffles or pancakes? But you have to be able to support why. Like yesterday we had some heavy stuff going on, but I had the most fun talking about local honey, and all the incredible. Things they claim it can do, all kinds of things. And to me, that was much more enjoyable than breaking down the latest story of politics and, how the country's going.
I can't imagine having y'all's job.
I told him before this podcast, I said, we come in every day, and I've stopped doing it going, there's nothing that can surprise me now. and then I'll look and I'll see the stories laid out, and I'll see the headlines. I go, I stand corrected.
Yep.
I did not think I would see that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think there is a yearning.
Oh, definitely. Well, with my daily column has been coming out for about 10 years now. I've written about 500 to 800 words every single day, and it started off with purely humor. That's what I wanted to do, just purely, and it graduated into I started writing a little bit about life, but then that graduated into I'm writing about current events, and then that moved into now I'm more. In many ways, I am kind of journalistic, kind of in the Louis Grizzard vein, I guess. Although I'm not qualified to touch the hem of his underpants.
Right, yeah.
Because of that, I get a lot of messages and expectations to cover current events. Right. And there are some times when I can't avoid it and I have to. And it's a weight. It's a weight on me because I don't want to take a hard stance in any issue because I'm not smart enough. So it's become quite the dance for me.
We'll come back. We'll continue our conversation with Sean Dietrich, Sean of the South, when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast continues. So, Bubba, we talk about this, and sometimes people get upset with us because we start talking about, look, if you're going to boycott stuff, I don't know where you're going to go because you're going to be inconsistent with some of the countries and, some of the companies and the state of the country and the pressures of certain wokeness, or else a mob will get after you. But let me tell you this, I have good news. You do have a choice when it comes to your wireless and cell coverage in Patriot Mobile. It's America's only Christian conservative wireless provider offering dependable nationwide service on all the 3 major networks. Now, you're the tech guy, so tell everybody what that means. That means that you're not going to lose anything as far as coverage.
No, you're actually on some of the same circuits that the big boys are on.
Yeah, so you get the best possible service in your area without having to deal with the propaganda and things that you just don't feel comfortable with. You'd rather not be giving money to that. So when you switch to Patriot Mobile, you support free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, the Second Amendment, our military veterans, and first responder heroes. They are a 100% U.S.-based customer service team, making the switching easy. And here's what I love about Patriot Mobile. If you don't agree, if you switch to them, you go, this is not as good as I wanted it to be, then you know what? They'll take care of you switching anywhere you want to go.
How about
okay?
that?
They'll do that for you. So why don't you take a look at it right now? Go to patriotmobile.com. That's patriotmobile.com/Rick Bubba. Put our names together. No and there. patriotmobile.com/Rick Bubba. When it comes to cell service and wireless, you do have a choice. Sean Dietrich, our guest on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. You can go to his website, seanofthesouth.com, and find out, everything that he is doing. I'm looking at the list. He said, he writes columns. He's done novels. He does commentary on life in the American South, or we should say rural. He's appeared in Newsweek, Southern Living, the Tallahassee Democrat. They did let you come back. They did a Good Grit, which I'm familiar with that magazine as well. South Magazine, Alabama Living, the Birmingham News. The list just goes on and on. And of course, the blog is where it all started. And I love the way you say blog too. Blog. His blog, and of course these live shows. I mean, he's coming up next to Lebanon, Tennessee on June the 9th, Knoxville, Tennessee, July the 7th, Chattanooga, Tennessee on August the 11th. And you have now this says you have another novel that's coming out. Is this old bio, or are you talking about November 14th coming up?
New November 14th.
So coming up. So and it's going to be called Kinfolk.
That's right.
Oh, so you got a lot going on.
Yeah, I do. And there's one in there that I would just mention that you didn't mention.
Okay.
The Grand Ole Opry.
Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, we had that on the show. Speedy showed us that today. But here's what.
So what will you be doing?
Yeah, have
there?
you already been though? You're returning?
This will be my second.
And that's
time.
on like June the 10th. Yeah. So this will be your second time.
Second time. Yeah, I've been invited back.
Can you, all right, so
that has to be all.
We haven't even unpacked the musical side of you, other than you saying you started out playing music as a kid. But when I go see you, I'm going to get, you said like in Connecticut, sing-alongs.
Yes.
What is the music side of Sean of the South?
Well, Hank Sr. is a big staple, but a lot of tunes that hopefully we all grew up with. I do a lot of church music because that's instant nostalgia.
Yeah.
That's a great connection. Old tunes, Faded Love. I don't know if Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, that kind of stuff.
What are you going to sing at the Grand Ole Opry?
Yeah.
Well, the first time I went, I didn't know what I was going to sing, and even the day of, I didn't know what I was going to sing. And I got in there, and I wasn't sure. I thought I was just going to play the guitar, and I saw the piano on the stage. I said, "Oh, y'all have a piano?" Because that's my earliest instrument. I've been playing that since I was 9 years old.
Oh.
And they said, "Yeah, well, Ronnie Millsap's going to be here tomorrow night." And I said, well, then I'm fixing to warm up that piano for him. And I did. I played a tune on the piano. What I did was I opened with "Hey Good Looking" because I stood in that circle.
Classic.
And I thought, I got to stand on this circle of wood right here where "Hey Good Looking" was debuted, and I got to sing that for my mother because she was in the audience.
Wow.
And then I sang "In the Garden." He walks with me and he talks with me. And I listened, and the entire Opry House was singing with me.
How did that feel, Sean?
Well, it just made the hair on the back of my legs stand up.
And you're a hairy fella, so that's a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then I went to the piano and I played "His Eyes on the Sparrow" and "I'll Fly Away." And it was such a beautiful night. I cried on stage as soon as I got out there and doubled over crying. And as they were, applauding, tears are falling on that little round wooden circle.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it was surreal. And I told myself internally, you got to suck it up, big boy, because you are here to do a job and you can't just cry on the stage. And somehow I got it all.
So here's the thing. So sometimes you're so want to do a good job and whatever. So many times if you get opportunities and whatever they may be, this is a biggie.
Yeah.
The rush of it, you go, I wish I'd have stopped and taken in the moment. Well, you definitely did.
Well,
and looking back, you go, maybe I shouldn't have taken it. But
well, it was honest. I when I think back about it, that was really how I was feeling, because the people who had come there to support me, they'd come from just about every state in the union. They're readers of mine. And I could not get over the humbling feeling of these people who had nothing. That they were kind enough to fly or drive and make it all the way there. It broke me. It broke me. And afterward, my wife and I threw a huge after party, and we shut the place down. This place that we rented, it was huge. And I looked out at everybody and I said, from the microphone, I said, I'm going to hug everybody. I'm going to be the last one to leave here tonight. I want to thank every single person who came here. And we did. We left there around 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And I hugged.
That's a tremendous amount of hugging.
Yeah, that's a lot of hugs.
My suit was so sweaty and gross when it was done, it could have stood up on
Makeup
its
all
own.
over you.
Yes, exactly.
And they locked it enough to invite you back.
How about that?
Well,
something you and I rarely encounter.
Yeah, we just...
Yeah.
It was the biggest, best night of my life. When I was a kid, my daddy built this Spring Hill GM plant. He was an iron worker on that, and we lived in Tennessee for a short jaunt. And he would take me to the Grand Ole Opry, and I watched Jerry Clower grace that stage.
Oh, wow.
I looked at my mother and my father, and my mother says this, at least she said that night. She said, "You looked at us and said, one day I would like to do that."
Oh, you did say that as a little
I was
boy?
about 5 years old, and she said, as two parents, they looked at me and said, every parent says, "Sure, yeah, you can do that."
Sure.
And she said she sat intentionally. She got tickets in the same section that we sat at when I was a 5-year-old.
Oh, that is
And now you
cool.
make us all cry. Now we're all going down. I mean, but
Sorry.
what a
That's just
special
touching
moment.
is when I saw Boxcar Willie there and then saw him at Shoney's afterwards.
It's not quite the same, but I will tell you. But
Right
no,
there
yeah,
at the buffet.
yeah. But just think about that. And I guess when you stood on that circle, all of that,
It was all falling on me. It was the culmination of an entire lifetime, because there was so much involved in it. The death of my father, the rough childhood that I had, the way that I grew up feeling. I've always felt less than everybody else. I've never felt equal. I walk into any room and I've always felt less than everybody else. And my mother was always the one to say, "You're not below anybody.
Right.
You're not above anybody, but you're not below anybody. You're right equal." But it's taken me forever to feel that. And that night I felt equal,
Amen.
with everybody.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll finish our conversation with Sean of the South on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. All right, so let's just call it. A lot of times when we're trying to, do landscaping around our home, and it doesn't go well. And FastGrowingTrees.com is here to help us have more success. Breathe some life into your own backyard with FastGrowingTrees.com. The spring is here. The beauty is here. And if you're like a lot of us, I know we're experiencing it here in the Deep South, that Arctic blast really killed a lot of stuff. Some of it's not coming back. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
Some of it's not coming back.
Dead as a wedge.
And so you may need to replace some of that, but now you're like, oh no, I want to be sure that the trees and the plants do well. Well, then go to FastGrowingTrees.com. And they've got shade if you need that. They've got fresh fruit if you need that. Maybe you need more privacy, just natural beauty. Let FastGrowingTrees.com help plant your dream garden with their expert advice and fast, reliable shipping. Okay, they're experts. They give you thousands of easy to grow plant and shrub and tree varieties for your unique climate. See, that's key. You don't disorder anything. I mean, where you're living is going to have a lot to do with it. You got to know the climate. Their experts do. So, if you'd like to do the Meyer lemons or to evergreens or everything in between, they can help you. And if you're like us, we love the idea of plants, but many times we don't have the expertise for the plants to flourish. Well, with FastGrowingTrees.com, you get customized recommendations based on your specific needs. Plus, their plant experts are always available to keep your plants growing healthy through the season and beyond. No more waiting in long lines. No more hauling heavy plants around. FastGrowingTrees.com. Your order is done online, and your plants will arrive at your door in just a few days. We love Fast Growing Trees. With the trees and plants we lost after the Arctic blast down south, they have given us great plants that are doing outstanding. So we are enjoying the beauty of this spring. So go to fastgrowingtrees.com/Bubba and get 15% off your entire order. 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/Bubba. Sean Dietrich, our guest on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, Sean of the South. And boy, hearing your incredible story, Sean.
That's cool.
Well, I'm sorry if it's a downer.
No, it's very cool. It's very cool. And you got a rocking beard, too. I mean,
My wife says I'm like a walking Persian rug.
Yeah, that beard.
that is a thick beard.
I have, my beard is intimidated by your beard. I mean, that, I'll tell you one thing.
I won't even try that.
I'll tell you what doesn't feel less in a room, and that's your beard. It has.
I mean, that beard takes a back seat to nobody.
I tell you what, it's been standing in the circle for a while.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, so would you start shaving when you were 11? I mean,
Right after I was old enough to change my own diapers.
Have you always had a thick beard, or is that something came in later?
Truly, I have had a beard since I was my 17th birthday is when I started growing it. I've never shaved. I've never shaved it off. My wife would not. She'd kill me if I shaved it off.
Yeah. Yeah, I shaved mine one time, and you know, we all, you ever done something that everybody thinks is a good idea? And I walked in the room, and my wife said, "Can you put it back on?" And I'm like, "Well, no, not now. Now, and, you know, and unlike you, it's going to take me some time to get back there."
All I have to do is this.
She said I look like a piece of chicken after you pulled the feathers off of it.
Well, I have that CPAP machine, so I can't have anything that doesn't, it gets the airlock.
Oh, he could never have a
so.
CPAP.
No, I can't. When I eat pizza, I taste it for 5 days after.
So then you started going on the road.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so when I go to a Sean of the South show, I'm in my seats, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing really cool theaters, which is all these incredible rooms. What do I get? Do you walk out and then you usually open with some music? What's my combination of all this?
Well, I shoot from the hip, so I never know exactly what's going to happen. Sometimes we'll have a bluegrass band open for me, and I'll play a few with them. Or sometimes I'll come out and I'll just start the one-man train wreck right out the gate.
Right out the gate.
I'll sing a song. I'll tell a few. It's primarily comic. It's not comic. That's a bad word. It's humor.
Yeah.
It's,
Rural.
Humor.
That's a tough word for me. That's a tough
Rural.
one.
Maybe we should say Southern.
Rural humor.
Contiguous.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a word I had to learn today.
Contiguous.
That means the lower 48.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wish I just said lower 40.
I do too.
Well, I'm going to have to find 3 ways to work that into a sentence.
Yeah, please do. I tried today to work it into a commercial.
Well, it's and so it's just I go for about an hour and 30 minutes, unless I'm in a particularly good mood, and I'll go for 2 hours until these people are just standing in their seats, racing for the exits.
Right.
And then the big feature of all the shows that we do is the hugs afterwards. We do a meet and greet.
So you're hugging. You're going on the road to hug.
I have hugged. I would estimate, and this is a true estimation, 14 gazillion people.
Yeah, I'm a big hugger. I love hugging.
Yeah, he does love to hug. So does that explain why we had
We've had to watch it in the workplace, so you can get filed. Things will be filed against you because of that.
That's why
they have to want to hug back.
Yeah, yeah. Bubba, that's why somebody sent me a picture of Dr. Fauci tackling Sean. You know the. So let's go there though.
Yeah.
The pandemic.
Oh, well, the night the pandemic happened, we were on a 21 city book tour, and it was a book about my life. So that's a really hard one to.
And what's the name of it?
That's Will the Circle Be Unbroken.
Oh, okay.
That's a really hard one to promote when it's about your life. But the book itself,
I know it feels weird, doesn't
it? Well, because some of it wasn't pretty, but the book itself was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be funny, even though I dealt with some rough issues. It was all supposed to be humorous. So we had been to, I can't remember how many cities, but we were in Huntsville the night before, and there were 600 people there for this to support me. And I hugged every single one of them. And it was a long night. And I got back to the hotel room, and there was a talking head on the screen on the TV. And my wife said, "You got to hear this." And it said, "Whatever you do, don't hug anybody." And I looked at my clothes. It took 6 weeks to wash myself clean in the shower. And then it was just our tour was canceled. And then we were landlocked. Everything was, gigs were canceled, shows were canceled. For 2 years, we were.
I know. It
was really rough to be an entertainer and to go through it. I'm not complaining. People had it worse than I did. But that was quite a time. And then when we finally came back, I had a show in the little tiny town of Milton, Florida, little opera house there, about the size of a walk-in closet, really, really little thing. And it sold out in a couple of seconds because people are starved.
Desperate.
They
Yeah,
are.
desperate.
They want to get out.
I was nervous, and I don't ever get nervous before I get on stage. I was nervous the night before. Didn't sleep because can I still do this? Do I know how to do this?
You
anymore?
really were out of the rhythm of it all.
How good did it feel when you hit that stage? The lights come on and the applause was there.
Let me tell you, it was euphoria. It was almost, I could use a dirty word to describe it. It was just beautiful to see all these people and all of us in one room together breathing the same air again. It was nice.
And I think I think there was and now we're finding out a lot of it was unnecessary, is that the damage that it's done to people's psyches.
No kidding.
And I think they are desperate to come out to something.
I'm desperate.
Yeah, me too. And to get out there and grip and grin and
the hugging
and talk to people and converse. And I don't want to see you on my computer or my phone. I want to see you in person.
The hugging that has ensued at these shows afterwards. Sometimes we'll be there for 3.5, 4 hours hugging people, and it feels good.
It's amazing because I think it did make us realize what social animals we are.
Absolutely.
That's right.
We kind of took it for granted, never thought or had to feel what it was like without it. But even, being boxed up with your family, it just felt different, because you didn't get to interact with it.
Yeah, I don't want to spend that long with my family.
Yeah, we learned a lot about each other.
Look, and I give my wife total credit for this line, and it was a fantastic line. She looked at me and said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but I miss missing you." And I thought that was a great line.
I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, I thought that was a great line. But can I just prepare you for something? Sure. And I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So Nate Bartletsky, you familiar with Nate, the comedian?
I've heard that name.
He's clean, funny, hilarious guy.
Are you saying his last name right?
I don't know. It's
Bargatze.
Yeah, okay. Well, Sean didn't know. Why y'all have to grab me? Sean doesn't.
Well,
know.
everybody listening.
I was impressed.
Whatever this guy's name is,
the Tennessee Kid, right?
I'm preparing you for this commitment to hug people. Okay. So he had a little rise that's very similar to what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And before you know it, the 1,000 seat theaters turned into the 10 to 12,000 seat arenas. That's going to be a lot of hugging. Yeah, I mean, can you commit to that kind of hugging?
We saw him. His last performance we saw was at was it at Nissan?
Bridgestone, I know, in Atlanta.
Yeah, it was.
Mercy.
And they put him in the middle and sewed the whole thing out.
Well, I think I've got an answer.
Yeah.
I'll just never get that big.
There you go.
Well, here's the thing: are you going to have to start on Tuesday night for a Saturday show?
Right.
It's the only way you work through.
No, but what you're speaking to is, and I know Bubba and I both have this. All the guys on the show. Is I think we don't ever need to lose the gratitude of the people that go through like inconvenience and have to make effort to even care that what we're bringing out there, like you say, almost like going, does anybody care about this?
Right.
And all of a sudden people are like, tell you what, we care about it, and we appreciate you doing it, and we're benefiting from it, and we want you to know that we appreciate it.
And I want them to know that I appreciate it.
You got to give it back.
Yeah.
And once you stop doing that is when I think God says, okay, well, I guess you're done with this now.
Well, and I don't. I like small things. Sometimes if I have a choice between a big event or a small event, we choose the small one.
Yeah.
Because it feels so good.
Yeah.
And there's not as many people to hug.
That's
right. Yeah. That's right. That's good.
And there's usually a potluck involved.
Right. Yeah. I bet you do get a lot of cakes and pies and cornbread.
We had to judge a pound cake contest recently in Monroeville, Alabama.
How do you judge that? They're all winners.
They're all good.
If you don't have type 2 diabetes by the time you're done,
Right.
did you even try?
No. Wow. Because we also in the South, we're not just great storytellers. We have the best food.
Oh man. But the thing that's saddest is even in the South, and this is my public service announcement. Quit getting your fried chicken from Publix. I love Publix fried chicken as much as anybody else. I hope they're not a sponsor of this show.
Well, they were. But no, it's not. Go
That's
right
all
ahead.
right. We'll bleep it out.
No, I know what you. I know you're right. What you're saying is a public service announcement.
They the little churches these days were used to Eula May and Sister Verna would have the real fried chicken. Today they're getting it from Winn-Dixie. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope Winn-Dixie didn't sponsor this show either.
No.
One of the great inventions in my lifetime was Extra Crispy.
Oh man!
I really when I heard about that rumor, I thought that can't be true. That can't be true.
How can it get any more crispy?
I go, this is great. I mean, it's basically crust with a little bit of meat in the middle. Yeah, I mean, that's a good part anyway.
Amen.
Well, Sean, what a pleasure. This has been a blast.
Oh, this has
Thank
been a
you.
blast
And
for me.
I hope it's the beginning, as I said earlier, of a great
Yeah,
friendship.
please come back. Don't let Rick scare you.
That's right. I'm going to lay off, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to call you for a few days. Okay, and it's
Brad will tell you, I won't smother you, Rick will.
yeah, I will.
Of all the gin joints in all the world, you had to walk into mine.
Trust me, I don't like a lot of people, but when I do,
Oh, boy.
Sean, thank you for being with us. SeanoftheSouth.com for everything about Sean Dietrich, and we thank you for being with us, and we thank all of you for being with us on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.